Hey everybody, this is Katie with Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance, back for part 4 of our 4-part soil sample FAQ series with Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance. For everybody who has been bearing with us throughout this process, I really appreciate your time and attention. I know it's been a lot of information coming to you at once, sometimes it's been a little bit boring, but to me it's really interesting stuff, and no matter whether or not you think it's interesting, it's good information for everybody to know, whether you're a homeowner or an applicator who's trying to build an effective fertilizer program. Soil samples give us a lot of great information about the nutrient quality in the soil for the lawn that we're trying to grow. This is valuable to know because it's no longer a blind guess just throwing down a one-size-fits-all program. All of a sudden we know exactly what's missing so that we can give the lawn the best shot that it has for success. This is the last part of the series. We've got a lot of information about what we see long term, so let's get started. In part 1 of this series, which you can check out here, we talked about how having a soil sample taken from your yard is very similar to having blood work drawn at a doctor's office. Little bits and pieces are taken here and there to be able to get a picture of the data that comes from the whole. In part 2, which you can check out here, we talked about how then a doctor is going to interpret those blood work results that come back from a lab and figure out exactly what the causes of any illnesses might be. It's the same thing with a soil analysis report. The data that comes back to us from the lab is interpreted by one of our professionals to figure out what nutrients are deficient in your soil. And in part 3, which you can check out here, we talked about how the corrective treatments that a fertilizer company recommends based on the insufficiencies in your soil are very similar to the targeted treatments that a doctor recommends if there are things that can be corrected on your blood work, whether it's a stronger B12 shot or a stronger calcium treatment. It's very, very similar in terms of the way that we treat the things that are missing. In this part of the series, we're going to look at the final stage, which is what the long-term prognosis is for any corrective treatments or wait-and-sees that have been elected based on what's going on with the data revealed from a soil evaluation. Talked about in past installments, the science behind a soil analysis and the data that a soil sample ends up revealing is very fickle. It's variable, it's sensitive, it can be a little inconsistent because there's so many uncontrollable factors and variables going into the entire system. As a result, this data can alter and shift in ways that aren't necessarily expected over the short term. Over the long term, we like to see some bit of trend, but it's kind of like a roller coaster. You can have ups and downs generally leading to an upward growth trend in terms of where we want to see those values going. Trust me, this is frustrating for professionals. You have so many forces going into the soil, such as biological forces, meteorological forces, geological forces, and all of these things take effect on the same source in different ways. As a result, you can have, acidic rain coming down, and that's changing the pH of your soil downward. You can have plant growth and decay going in from a biological source that's moving the pH downward. But then at the same time, geologically, you can have a very, very slow weathering and leaching of basic sources into the soil and alkaline input that ends up balancing it out a little bit more. So every yard is different as a result because everybody's factors are coming in from a different direction. So it's hard to really put a nail on what kind of changes you can expect based on whether or not corrective treatments are done and how long it's going to take. Everything's different, the weather's different, the biology is different, the geology is different. So where we like to see over the course of several seasons a positive trend and moving in the right direction, season to season, you're not always going to see that change within the first year or within a certain year period. Remember, this is okay. It's not a bad thing if overall the data shown on your soil evaluation doesn't change or even moves a little bit in the wrong direction. There's a lot going on, and just because a value goes down a little bit doesn't mean that your lawn's looking any worse. The biggest thing to do in any situation like that is take a look at the grass. Actually look outside and say, okay, well, last year my pH level was 5.5 and this year it's 5.5, but wow, my grass is pretty much twice as thick and healthy as it was before. There's a lot going on, so we want to look at the entire picture before we make any judgment calls. It's actually a pretty common pattern that we see where a yard has pretty average soil and little to no turf grass because it hasn't been very well maintained before. And then over the course of a season, the soil is treated with fertilizer and a good aeration seeding is performed and some grass gets growing, and all of a sudden that grass is developing and really excited, and 1 or 2 seasons after the start of treatment, all of a sudden the soil values come back looking worse. The pH might be a little bit better from the lime treatments, but there's less phosphorus and less potassium. And at first, especially if you're an applicator with less experience, that can look really discouraging, like, oh, I'm doing the right thing, but nothing's really moving. The difference is all of a sudden you've got a lot of grass in the system pulling those nutrients out and utilizing them. You've got to look at what the lawn actually looks like, because if your lawn is healthier, that's a good thing. That's the whole purpose. If those phosphorus potassium levels or anything else are a little bit lower, it's just because it's pulling those nutrients out. We may recommend a corrective treatment just to get those back into the system faster, but overall we're seeing the direction that we wanted in the first place for that lawn. If it's something that you're worried about and you're seeing your soil sample results come back and you compare them to last year and there's not much change or there's a negative change, ask your applicator. That's why that person is sending you those results, so you can ask your questions. If they have any concerns, they'll share them with you and you guys can work together to figure out what the best plan is going to be. Otherwise, they might be able to give some context to what that data is showing so that you can have better peace of mind about the progress that your property is making. Really normal question that applicators hear a lot after soil analysis reports come in is, I signed up for corrective treatments, so why doesn't the data look better? Nobody likes to see little results for a bigger cost. That's kind of counterintuitive, and the whole point was to get those numbers moving. But don't be discouraged. It's not necessarily a bad thing, like we were just talking about. One of the most common questions that applicators get once soil analysis reports come in and are sent to clients is, I signed up for those corrective treatments all last year at that additional cost, and yet my data hasn't really moved. What's going on? Wasn't that the whole point, to get those numbers moving? It's a really normal thing to see, and it's a normal question to ask. The biggest variable that we see this happening with is going to be pH. The product that is used to treat pH insufficiencies is called lime. Lime is an alkaline material based in calcium that reverses acidic soil and makes it more neutral. It's a neutralizer. Lime can be really slow acting in terms of the amount of time that it takes to break down into the soil and start doing what it needs to do. Picture Perfect and a lot of other providers use a quick release lime that still takes up to a couple of months to start kicking in. So it's very possible, especially if you had a later fall lime application and then an early January soil evaluation, for not all of that lime to have broken down and started impacting those numbers. That being said, that's a small part of the reason. Another bigger reason is that there's a lot going on in terms of soil pH, like we've been talking about. You've got all of those outside forces that we've discussed contributing to wanting to lower that pH. So it's possible that even that corrective lime application isn't enough that quickly to undo all of the acidity that's going into the soil to compromise that. Keep in mind, pH is logarithmic. This means that for every single unit on the scale, there is a 10 times factor going in. So the pH difference between 6 and 7 is 10 times the acidity. The pH difference between 5 and 7 is 100 times the acidity. As a result, even a 0.1 difference is a big difference, especially with something as slow working as a natural system, such as soil, geology, anything else. No matter what the cause is, and a good fertilizer company like Picture Perfect is always happy to explore what the cause might be for your specific lawn, corrective treatments are going to take time. Odds are we'll see some amount of progress, but it's not going to be a single season's fix, and it's not going to be an overnight process. It's nature. It takes time. That can be frustrating, but the biggest important thing is going to be patience, and the second biggest important thing is going to be understanding the whole picture and what's going on. So I know know we've spent the last couple of weeks talking a lot about soil samples, but soil samples and soil health and soil science and soil isn't the end all be all of entire turf health. There's more to the plant than just the roots. If you are seeing issues with your lawn despite doing corrective treatments and despite getting improvement in the soil analysis report data, there's probably something else going on. Either it was a terrible season weather-wise, we had a drought, or we had way too much rain, if your yard got fungus, if you had some weeds move in that you didn't expect, like Bermuda that crowded out some of the fescue. Anything like that is going to be a big contributor any given season to the overall health of your lawn. It's not just about the soil. Like a lot of things, the quality of a lawn is kind of a matter of perspective. We get most excited by improvement. That's what we're really into. Before and after pictures, which we have tons of on our website, more than just standalone pictures, are the best thing ever to us because it gives so much context to the progress that was made on a lawn. As a result, if we see improvement on a season-to-season basis, if we can say, 60% of your yard was fescue last year and now it's 80%, that's awesome to us. But for a homeowner, 80% might still not be good enough. And if your idea of a picture-perfect lawn is one that is immediately gorgeous, uniform, and immaculate, progress isn't going to be as exciting to you. You want those end game results. And that makes sense. That's what you're paying for. That's what your personal goals are. And we're going to try to deliver on that. But I think I've said it before, it's nature. It takes time. Give some context. Breathe. It's going to be okay. Progress really, really is the most important thing. Since we talked about before and after pictures, this is just kind of like a little side note for any of our Picture Perfect clients or any of the applicators that follow our channel that are looking for new ways to improve their client experience and the ways that they're treating yards. Before and after pictures are an awesome thing. I love doing them. So if you're a Picture Perfect client who wants to see the before and after pictures of your lawn from the first time that we visited to the most recent time that we visited, let me know. I'm happy to throw something together. And if you're an applicator, offer this to your clients. Put it all over your social media and website. It's really, really great to give a timeline of the progress being made on a yard. A, to give context to exactly what the average amount of time it is to see that progress, and B, to show the accomplishments that you've made in turning a lawn around. This is a really important question when you consider the financial implications of continued corrective treatments. Odds are a corrective treatment has been a pretty substantial cost increase for a program that wasn't necessarily expected from the get-go if a client ends up signing up for it. As a result, when soil samples the following season come out, a big question that we get asked is whether or not the corrective treatments from the year before are going to automatically renew. At Picture Perfect, and every provider is different, we do not automatically renew corrective treatments. Your standard maintenance program is going to continue season to season until you decide that something needs to change, but corrective treatments are usually a per season thing based on the soil sample that was received for that season at the beginning of the year. This is because a lot of that data can change. If your pH started out at 5.1 and we needed to do heavy lime applications to start pulling it up, and then this year it comes back as 5.5 or 5.7, then we might not need to apply quite so heavy of an application and we're going to be able to save you a little bit of money. Same thing goes for any other nutrients, and hopefully if you needed to make some progress but not too much, we already fixed it. A substantial number of clients who have done a season of corrective treatments end up correcting the deficiencies and don't have to continue with those. While there are still some people who need to continue for 2 or 3 seasons, it's an option. We're never going to automatically sign you up for anything that is elective, so it's always a new conversation season to season with the applicator who is sending you your results. We did it. It's over. Soil sample discussion is over. I'm a little burnt out on it, but if you have questions, let me know. I want to hear them. Subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things that you need to do to stay up to date and informed on the next things that we're going to be talking about, which hopefully are not going to be so long and are not going to be boring for some people. I think I lost some interest on these videos, which makes me a little sad because I think this is pretty cool stuff, but that's fine. It's life, it happens. So I want to know what you guys want to talk about more. I've already heard recommendations from people to talk about spring mulch services and what kind of mulch we use, what kind of weed control we're doing at different points, and delve more into that. If you want to check out the spring weeds video that we've already done, you can check it out here. But there's a lot more subjects that we want to talk about. Next week, we're going to be talking about what our company is going to be up to in February with one of our What's Next videos, as well as talking about our first application of fertilizer for the year, which will be starting pretty soon. Again, if you have questions, let me know. I want to hear from you guys. If you want to check out the blog series that we did as part of this video, I write those myself. I'm a much better writer than I am a videographer, so let me know if you have questions about that as well. I would love for somebody to read them because they take me a lot of time. Keep me in a job, please. Let me know how I'm doing. My boss reads all of your comments too, so he wants to know that I'm doing well. And again, be sure to subscribe. I really appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate your attention, and I hope you have a picture perfect day.